Hello everyone. Sometimes life seems peaceful, until out of nowhere, waves begin to rise again. I once thought that after everything, I could live quietly with little Swy, tending the garden, picking fruits, and smiling each morning. But then, one day, the past came knocking. A woman appeared, her gaze carrying something that made my heart falter. And with just one sentence, the peace I'd held on to shattered like morning mist. This morning, sunlight spread gently across the treetops, slipping through the forest canopy and casting a warm glow over the small garden behind my house. The chirping of birds, the whisper of wind through the bamboo grove. Together, they blended into a familiar melody of the mountains. I carried little Swy in my arms, walking along the shaded path where rows of papaya trees stood close together, their branches heavy with fruit. Each papaya hung plump and green, glistening like gifts from the earth. I set Swy down on a small mat, handed her her favorite toy, then climbed carefully onto the lowest tree. My hand brushed against the cool skin of the fruit, still damp with morning dew. Every time I picked one, Swy laughed gleefully, waving her tiny hands as if cheering me on. The early sunlight wasn't harsh, just warm enough to dry the drops of dew still clinging to my hair. When I looked up, the sky stretched endlessly, clear and blue, filling my heart with a quiet peace I couldn't quite name. Here, in this lonely mountain valley, it was just the two of us, yet I never felt alone. Because for me, seeing my child smile, feeling the weight of ripe papayas in my hands, that was already the simplest yet deepest happiness life could ever offer. While I was still on the hillside harvesting papayas, Nam quietly arrived at my house. The winding road was still veiled in mist, his motorbike engine blending softly into the damp breath of the mountains. On the back of his bike, several new wooden planks were neatly tied, slanting slightly, glinting like slivers of morning sunlight. No one knew he was coming, and he didn't tell a soul. He simply did what his heart told him was right. When he reached the small hut where my daughter and I lived, he parked the bike outside. The thatched roof was worn, and the bamboo walls still had gaps that let the cold wind in at night. Nam looked around, took a slow, steady breath, and began to work. The rhythmic sound of his hammer echoed through the quiet air, mingling with the rustling of the forest leaves. He measured, cut, and joined each plank with care, his hands strong yet gentle. Piece by piece, he fitted the wood together until a sturdy bed frame stood solidly in the middle of the humble room. When the bed was done, he gathered a few bamboo slats and began crafting new window shutters. The sound of hammering continued, patient, steady, like the heartbeat of someone working with devotion. He sanded the rough edges, fitted them into place, and sealed the open gaps where the wind once slipped through. Sweat glistened on his forehead, mixing with sawdust in the dim light of noon. When he finally finished, Nam sat quietly for a moment, looking around the little house. He didn't say a word, just smiled faintly. Now, the place had a strong new bed, windows that kept out the cold, and a quiet warmth. A small piece of peace, built by hands that truly cared. That afternoon, in the modest stilt house, Mr. Tien sat quietly, pouring himself a cup of hot tea. The gentle aroma of tea drifted through the still air. His wife came down the wooden stairs, her face still shadowed with irritation. He looked up, his voice calm and steady. "Don't dwell on it anymore. LyTucam has already left. She's gone over the mountain to stay with some acquaintances. She just wants a peaceful life to raise her child. Nothing more, nothing less." His wife stopped in her tracks, saying nothing, only letting out a faint sigh. Mr. Tien's gaze softened, but his tone remained firm. "I know you care, and I know you worry. but jealousy only brings misery. We help others out of kindness, not for gain or pride. That poor woman's life has been hard enough. Adding suspicion will only make our hearts heavier. Silence lingered for a while, broken only by the slow creak of the ceiling fan and the distant chirping of birds outside. His wife finally sat down beside him, her eyes gentler now. Mr. Tien poured another cup of tea, sliding it gently toward her with a small, understanding smile. "Here, have some tea. Let it calm your heart. She's gone now. Maybe we should let go too." His wife said nothing more, but the lines on her face slowly softened. In the fading afternoon light, the rising steam from the tea mingled with the last traces of unspoken jealousy, dissolving, little by little, into the quiet air. The woman couldn't find peace after the conversation with her husband, even though Mr. Tien had assured her that Lytucam had moved away. A quiet unease still lingered deep within her heart. All afternoon, the image of that small house nestled halfway up the hill kept flickering in her mind. In the end, she decided to go, to see it with her own eyes, to know for certain whether his words were true. The old path leading up to the house was just as she remembered, dusty, scattered with fallen leaves. Her steps slowed as the thatched roof came into view between the trees. But as she drew closer, the sight before her made her heart sink. The door was ajar, the inside empty and still. The kitchen corner was cold and bare, the earthen floor still faintly marked with old footprints. Yet everything was cloaked in a quiet, haunting emptiness. She stood there for a long time on the porch, letting the mountain wind sweep through her hair. So it was true. Mr. Tien hadn't lied. Lytucam had gone, quietly, without a single word of farewell. In that moment, the woman's doubts slowly faded away, replaced by a hollow ache tinged with quiet remorse. She sighed softly, turned back to look at the winding path she had taken, a path that twisted and turned, just like the human heart, but in the end, always found its way back to peace. The morning market began with its familiar chorus, the calls of vendors, the hum of motorbikes, and the cheerful chatter of people starting a new day. I found a small corner near the edge of the market, spread out an old mat, and carefully arranged each papaya in neat rows. Little Swy sat beside me, her bright eyes wide with curiosity, reaching out every so often to touch the smooth green fruit. Her giggles, light and pure, softened something deep inside me. The sun began to filter through, slipping between the worn patches of the market tarp and glinting across her face. I quickly adjusted the cover to shade her, then turned to greet my first customer, a kind woman choosing 2 ripe papayas to make soup for her child. As I weighed the fruit and slipped them gently into a plastic bag, we exchanged a few small, familiar words, the quiet kind of conversation that passes easily between mothers. Now and then, someone would walk by, glance at my little stall, and buy a few papayas just to lend their support. Each time I folded the small bills carefully into my shirt pocket, a warmth spread through me, not from the money itself, but from the feeling that my labor, however simple, was enough to keep us going. Amid the noise, the dust, and the bustle of the market, I still felt a strange peace, because my daughter was right beside me, because the fruit I had gathered with my own hands was now turning into a little rice, a little dried fish, enough for our supper tonight. As I looked at little Swy, happily playing with an empty plastic bottle, I smiled. Life was hard, yes, but as long as she could laugh like that, every bit of exhaustion seemed to fade away. I turned back to the pile of papayas, straightening them once more, and silently wished that tomorrow's sun would shine just as gently as it did today. When I carried little Swy home after a long morning at the market, all I wished for was a brief rest, just a moment to ease the weariness in my shoulders. The slope before the house was still damp from the morning rain, the faint scent of wet bamboo and forest soil drifting gently through the air. I stepped inside and stopped in my tracks. Right there, in the middle of our small wooden home, stood a brand new bamboo bed. Sunlight streamed softly through a freshly made window frame, filling the room with warmth and light. Before I could gather my thoughts, Nam, the man who had helped my child and me so many times, looked up and smiled. "I made a simple bed and window for you and the little one," he said, "so the house won't feel so dark and you can rest more comfortably." I stood there, speechless for a moment, my heart suddenly warm in a way I hadn't felt for a long time. The bamboo looked simple, yet the joints were tied carefully, sturdy, precise, and full of quiet care. I could tell he had worked for hours without rest. A "thank you" rose in my throat, but my voice trembled before I could speak. Just then, the sound of a motorbike came from outside. It was old Mr. Tien, our kind neighbor, carrying a 3-tier bamboo rack on the back of his bike. He smiled gently, saying, "I made this for you, somewhere to keep your bowls and dishes clean." I looked at the two of them, one older, one younger, both bending down, adjusting each small detail in my humble little home. A quiet wave of emotion welled up inside me. Out here, in the middle of the mountains where life is so lonely and rough, I had never imagined kindness could still find its way to me. Little Zwei sat on the new bed, clutching her toy chicken, laughing brightly. I sat beside her, brushed her hair gently, and whispered, "We're so lucky, my dear." The late afternoon light streamed through the new window, painting everything in shades of soft gold. I looked out at the open sky beyond the trees, and for the first time in a long while, my heart felt light, as if life itself had quietly gifted me a little more hope. As dusk settled, I rested by the new window, gazing at the fading sunlight on the distant treetops. The breeze carried the scent of fresh bamboo, the scent of peace. And I thought, perhaps life is fair, in its own gentle way. If we hold on, stay kind, and keep believing, then somehow, someday, good things will find their way back to us. Thank you for listening to my story. The story of a single mother living quietly in the mountains, still learning to smile, even when life feels heavy. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and share, so together we can keep spreading a little kindness in this world.
Chúng ta vừa cùng nhau đi qua một hành trình nhỏ nhưng lại chất chứa thật nhiều cảm xúc, từ những nỗi buồn, những giọt nước mắt cho đến cả những khoảnh khắc bình yên, giản dị vô cùng quý giá. Cảm ơn bạn đã đồng hành và lắng nghe đến tận những giây phút cuối cùng. Mỗi một lượt xem, mỗi một ánh mắt dừng lại, mỗi một trái tim cùng đồng cảm đều là nguồn động lực để những câu chuyện như thế này được tiếp tục viết nên. Nếu cuộc sống còn buồn bề, đôi khi chỉ cần những giây phút lắng lại, bạn sẽ nhận ra rằng niềm tin, lòng nhân ái và sự sẻ chia luôn có sức mạnh chữa lành kỳ diệu. Và cũng chính nhờ có bạn, người không ngại dành thời gian quý giá để đồng hành, mà hành trình của nhân vật trong câu chuyện này trở nên trọn vẹn hơn, ấm áp hơn. Dù phía trước vẫn còn nhiều chông gai, nhưng chỉ cần trái tim con người biết hướng về nhau thì bóng tối nào cũng sẽ được soi sáng bởi một tia hy vọng. Xin gửi đến bạn lời cảm ơn chân thành nhất. Hẹn gặp lại các bạn trong các tập tiếp theo, nơi câu chuyện còn tiếp tục mở ra và những bước chân kiên cường, những mơ ước lặng lẽ và niềm tin chưa bao giờ tắt. Cảm ơn các bạn rất nhiều. Chúc các bạn luôn bình an.